Okay, so we're back in the tool set and we're going to demonstrate a new feature called teleport campsites. Now campsites, it's a little tricky to set up. Well, not really tricky, but it's a little different to set up than the way they work. Um, the concept of a campsite is pretty basic, and you can kind of think of it like a flow chart. A player logs into your newly rebooted server and the server has to make a decision. The first choice the server has is, should I send the player to the designated start location for my world, or should I send the player to their saved campsite location where they last perform an important activity, and that activity could be any number of things which we'll discuss in a little bit. It has to make this decision because if it's a brand new player that's never been on your world before, then they're not going to have a campsite saved. They're not going to have a location saved. So it'll need to actually place them in the beginning of your world where you would want to consider your start location. Um, on the other hand, if they have a campsite, it's got to send them the other way. So we need what I would like to call a bootstrap area. It's basically a simple little area. It has nothing in it. It can be tiny, and it's just a place where you're going to actually set the Neverwinter Nights set start location down in. You're going to put it in this little bootstrap area. And then when a player arrives in this little bootstrap area, they're going to get instantly and immediately transported out of it into one of two places. That would be your actual world start location or their campsite location. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this area first. Actually, I'm going to back up. Before we do that, we're going to go into the teleport plugin configuration and activate this feature, Save Player Campsite. So without this active, player campsites don't get saved. So if they're in your module, campsites will be saved with this checked, and they won't be saved if it's not checked. This becomes important when we look at dungeon instancing because we don't want campsites saved in dungeon instances. So in instances, we'll have this off. But for your main world and for this demonstration, we'll want this on. So I'm going to turn this on, and we're actually going to come back in here in a second because we're going to have to use this too, but we'll get into that in a sec. So we've got the function turned on, and now what we're going to do is create our little bootstrap area. Now you can call it whatever you want. You can call it entry, you can call it bootstrap, whatever. It's not important what you call this. I'm just going to call it entry. We're going to keep it tiny and finish. Okay, and we're going to put our start location down in it. So this is where players will log in. Now, they're not actually going to get an opportunity to walk around in this area. They're not actually going to go anywhere in this area. It's just going to be a little area where we want this start location, and this is going to be the area where decisions are going to be made. What's important, however, as with all new areas, is we have to put the client on enter script in. And again, this is pretty typical of any persistent world. You'll always want to make sure your enter and exit scripts are in place, like so. And we'll put that back over there. And then we'll want to configure this area as a campsite decision-making area. So we'll fire up the Legends Teleport plugin. We'll go File, Teleport, Current Area. And when we get in here, what we want to do is set this to campsite. Now again, we need to make sure that we have campsites turned on, server turned on, and campsite chosen in this. Okay, so it's a standard teleport, and we're teleporting to the campsite. What this basically means is that when a player arrives in this area, it's going to check to see if they have a valid campsite. If not, it's going to send them to the default starting area for your world. If they do have a valid campsite, it's going to send them there. So we'll hit finish and quit. So the next thing we want to do is actually determine what that valid location is. So we'll have to bring up our other areas, and I'm going to just load up this grassy field that we had from before. And again, this could be our starting town or wherever we want new players to start. However, instead of using the set start location, we're actually going to put down a waypoint. So we're going to grab ourselves a waypoint, and we're going to put it here. And we're just going to change the flag color, something I like to do, just to really make it stand out from the rest, we'll just make it, I don't know, black. Just so that I know that this is where new players will actually come when they arrive in my world. They'll always land here until they get themselves a campsite location. And I'm going to give this a special name. Its tag. I'm going to call it World Start or something like that. It can be whatever, again, whatever you want. It's just important to have this. So we'll call it World Start. And I just copied it there so I can actually have it in my buffer so I don't have to type it again. Once I have this down, I'm going to load this up into the teleport plugin, go into the configuration, and this is where I'm going to set the module entry waypoint tag. And I'm going to set it to World Start. So this tells the teleport plugin when they arrive in their little Bootstrap area, check to see if they have a campsite. If they don't, go and find out what this is and teleport them there instead. So we'll finish and we're done. Okay, so you can see that. Now, whenever the player logs in, brand new player logs in, they'll end up here when they're done and they can go adventure around. The next part is, okay, well, how do they actually save their campsite? Well, if you're using the Legends plugins, that can happen in a lot of different places. For example, whenever a player changes from one area to the next, their location is saved. That's automatic. That's part of those master scripts that we keep putting in on client enter events. If you're using those in your enter events for your areas and you have campsites active, their location will be saved. So whenever they transition to a new area, their location is saved. Other things that can cause their campsite to be saved, binding to a bindstone can cause their location to be saved. If you have the Legends Quest plugin, accepting a quest, finishing a quest, things like that, that can cause their location to be saved. If you're using the Legends World plugin and you have the rest system activated and the player rests, their location can be saved. And any number of different kind of activities will typically save their location. If they are about to enter an instance, their location is saved just prior to the actual entry of the instance. So things like that will save your location. Now, of course, there comes the question of, well, what happens if I'm not doing all those things? I'm not using the Quest plugin or I'm doing anything like that. Then you gotta get into your own sort of thing. You gotta make decisions on when a player is going to save their location. One way you can do this is by having a custom item. You can give a player an item, put it in their inventory, and they can activate it themselves and save their location. And I'll just describe how that's done. I'm going to bring over this box. And in this box, actually, no, wrong one. Not going to bring over that box. Going to bring over this one. I have a lot of real estate here that I can do my work with. In here, there's and you'll notice I've got the master scripts, I've got the info plugin, I've got the teleport plugin here. In here, there's this script here called leg tele save campsite. It's a fairly straightforward script, and all you have to do is activate this script to save a player's location. You can call this script via an item activate. You can have it at a trigger. You can have it whenever you want. All you have to do is call this script, and you can typically call scripts from other scripts, using like execute script quotes, and it'd be leg tele underscore save campsite, comma OPC for the player that you want to save, and something like that. And I forgot about that. So you can you stick this in pretty much any script that you want, and what'll happen is the system will check to see, and this doesn't actually make the campsite be saved all the time regardless. What'll happen is it'll check to see if the plugin is active, it'll see if you have save campsites active, it'll see if the area has an override or not, and if all of those things are valid and correct in the way they should be, the player will actually have their campsite saved. So that's how you can manually do it yourself if you really want to. So, and I gotta go in now because I'm not sure if I just saved that in there or not. No, I didn't, so I'm okay. So you can call that, if you're using Legends plugins, most of the major events that a player will do will save their site, for example, changing areas and whatnot, or you can do it by hand. Some places I've actually seen they'll give a player an item and they can choose to save their location whenever they activate the item. You can do that too, just simply by calling that script. Now, there may be a time where you may not necessarily want a player, or an area where you may not want your player to have the ability to save their campsite. So for example, you have a special area where they're not allowed to save their site. You can override that functionality, and it's simply just setting a variable in the area. So you can just bring up the area properties, and I'm going to just do that. Grassy field, and you can go down and pull up its variables. And actually, before I do that, I'm just going to double check that I got the right variable here. Yeah, you can just pull up this and say leg telly no saves and set that to 1, integer 1. You do this on any particular area. You can leave the system alone, keep it activated. However, if that variable is set on an area, a player's campsite will not be saved for that particular area. So that's how you can kind of override it for special areas that you may want. So I'm just going to remove this variable now. There we go. And put that back. So now you can kind of override that. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate this, and that's all there is to it. It is now actually up and running and set up. So what I'm going to do is load this up in NWNX, and I'm going to log in with a new character, and my new character should end up right here. Actually, I'm going to, just for example's sake, I'm going to put this over here, and a brand new character should end up over here between these two mushrooms. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over and bind to this stone, because binding to a bind stone is one activity you can do to cause a campsite to be updated and saved. Then I'll log out, log back in. I'll log out and actually reset the server. And when I come back, when I log back in, I'll hit my little Bootstrap area, and I should appear next to this binding stone instead. So I'm going to do that and go back to game, and we'll see you in there in a minute. Okay, so here we are in game. I'm about to actually connect in, and I wanted to actually start recording before I actually entered the game, just so you can see what it looks like when you do this. So I'm just going to hit start here, and I connect in. And I should be taken to the Bootstrap. Bootstrap makes a decision. I don't have a campsite, so it sends me right between the two mushrooms where we would expect to start our world. So as you can see, it does add a little bit of fuzziness to the very beginning, to the login, but most people can tolerate that kind of thing. It's not a big deal. It's not a huge deal for what you get out of it at the end. The ability to have players, start their adventuring day, kind of where they left off, or fairly close to where they left off, versus, back in the beginning area where they have to do a bunch of traveling to just try and get back to where they were. Some worlds are catered to that, and this may not be a useful function to them. Other worlds, like the Legends Persistent world, this is very important, because the starting town, which is the village of Attilius in the Legends Persistent world, is significantly far away from places. If you're level 5, you could be in Blackport, which is a different city, or you could be in the middle of the Stonewitch Mountains, and you don't really want to have to travel from a major populace or a town to kind of get back to where you were when you last logged off. So this becomes valuable in situations like that. If your world is not designed that way, if you already have a central hub where you're doing, player teleports to other towns and things that are maybe nearby where they'll begin their questing, or players typically travel back to the town before they log off, may not be so useful to you, but it can be useful for other things. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to rebind to this stone, because with campsites active now, rebinding is one of the things that will cause my campsite to be updated. So now my campsite is right there, versus over here by these, well, actually it wasn't even a campsite, versus using the default location over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly pause the video, and I'm going to go out and reset the server and then log back in and demonstrate what's going to happen. Okay, so our server's been restarted and I'm just about to connect back in, and we'll watch what happens. Again, I hit our little Bootstrap area and it makes the decision and instantly forces us to a new location. And again, that new location is right here at our bindstone versus over there by the mushrooms. So again, I can give the players an item so that they can manually do this, or I can, if I'm using several Legends plugins like resting and area changing and quests and things like that, all of those events will cause this, and even the dying of the Legends World plugin, if you die and respawn, things like that, they'll all store your location. So if you die and you get frustrated and you log out rather than travel back to town, that's okay, because when you come back in, you'll be in that same place where you last were. So that's what it kind of makes it valuable there, and it can even add another level of complexity or challenge to the players. Dying and logging out doesn't necessarily allow you to escape. You may have to come back and still deal with the issue of where you were when you died. So again, that's the whole campsite concept, and again, it does work with multi-worlds. So and that's kind of important because it kind of a segue into the next section, which is server-to-server teleporting. If you have a kind of a server setup where you have a bunch of main world land, and your module's getting so big you have to split it up into a separate server, and you have a road connecting the two, how does the system know where to send you? What you can do then is create what I call like a Bootstrap module. And a Bootstrap module can have a teleporter where it will actually be intelligent enough to send you to the correct server where your campsite is stored. So the campsites are even multi-server aware. So if I have a Bootstrap area and in the Legends Persistent world, and I've got videos of this, it's kind of, I call it the tutorial area, where you go in and learn how to play the game. And when you hit the portal in the Legends Persistent world, what actually happens behind the scenes is when you hit that portal, what it does is it actually checks to see where your campsite is before it actually sends you anywhere. And the campsites not only store your location of where you are in a world, it'll actually store which server you happen to be on too. So that particular portal in the Legends Persistent World tutorial area will actually send you to the correct server first. And once it sends you to that correct server, the Bootstrap area in that server will pick up where your campsite is for that particular server and send you there. So even if you're in a large, if you have a large world like I do, and it's multi-servers and your campsite could be anywhere, the teleport plugin will handle all of that for you. So we're getting into a little bit more complexity now, and our next tutorial is going to be just that, how to set up two servers and how to teleport between the two. Once again, I'm not going to get into the detail of how to share a character vault. I'm not going to get into how to run two servers on the same machine. Basically, we're going to assume that you already know how to do that. We're going to assume you already know how to configure your firewall to support multiple ports. We're going to assume that you already have a server, and in the demonstration we're just going to run two little test modules on two separate computers, and just move from one to the other and back and forth. So that's what we're going to do in our next tutorial, and we'll do that in the next video. So I'm going to end this one here, and we'll see you back in a tool set.